Welcome back once more, ladies and gentlemen, to the Adventures in Historyland YouTube channel. Today, I am joined by, I don't know what that was about, joined by Pamela Roberts, creative producer and historian, and the author of a new book, which explores Black history in the Edwardian era. Pamela, I'm so glad. I'm just going to go back. I was so glad to get your email because I love this sort of history that I know nothing about. Of course, that means a lot of the weight is going to come onto your shoulders because usually I can help out my guests because I've never heard of this man before. But thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Josh, for inviting me.
So the book is about a very interesting guy named he has one of those double-barreled names. His name is Harley, yes?
His name, yes, it's James Arthur Stanley Harley.
Right. And so right off the bat, let's say, what are three things we should know about this guy, so to give people a picture of one.
Okay. Antiguan scholar, born 1873 in a small village. Any Antiguan viewers out there, called All Saints. A gifted scholar. He attended Howard University in Washington, D.C., which was dubbed Black Oxford, similar to Oxford University. He also attended Yale University, Harvard, and Oxford University. So a very esteemed scholar whose childhood vocation was to become a priest.
Wow. Okay. No, he wasn't aiming low.
Absolutely not. No.
Talk about having your reach exceeding your grasp. Although I think he actually reached for what he wanted and took it, from the sounds of it.
Absolutely.
So I've never heard of him before. Had you ever heard of him before you started this?
No, I hadn't. It's quite a interesting story how I came to discover Mr. James Arthur Harley. If I may, I was in New Zealand on holiday. It was a Christmas time, and I was at a place called Rotorua, which is famous for its hot springs in New Zealand. And I got talking to a tour guide. At the end of the tour, she came to the bookshop and she gave me a book about Makareti Papakora, because I also mentioned I run Black Oxford Untold Stories, which is celebrating Black scholars from the turn of the 20th century to the present day.
We will put links in the description box so you can go and find out all this stuff.
Great. I thought she wasn't listening and just kind of humoring me. But by the end of the tour, she took me to the gift shop and she gave me this book about Makareti Papakora, who was the first Maori woman to study at the University of Oxford at St. Anne's College. At the time when Makareti studied, it was like a private home study that was set up. Anyway, I read the book, and subsequently, her collection is at the Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford. Now, I know the curator, Jeremy Coote, so I made contact with him and say, may I come and visit her collection, which I duly did. Upon visiting him, he introduced me to the curator of photographs and manuscripts, who handed me the photograph of Mr. James Arthur Harley on the occasion of the first diploma with two other students. And Mr. Christopher Morton asks, with Black Oxford and your research into Black scholars, do you know about this gentleman? We know he's from Antigua, and we know he studied on our first diploma of anthropology course. Other than that, we have not heard of him. We have no other knowledge. So I took the photograph and looked at it. No, hadn't come across it. And when I got home, I filed it. And file being a metaphor for being slung in a corner.
Yeah.
Whatever.
We know what you're talking about. There's filed things everywhere in this room.
Absolutely. So when I came to write my first book, The Untold Stories of Black Oxford, I thought, oh yes, he'd be good to include as a first Black student to undertake the diploma of anthropology. And then I started to kind of put out my feelers. You will know this, just as a researcher and your networks and your contacts. And you wait months, nothing happened. And then you might get a little bite, and there was something like, speak to so-and-so. So I got a little bite, and someone said, there may be someone in Shepshed who will know of this, but I think he's gone senile. Like, oh no. Months went by. And then I got a phone call from this person, and he was saying, I understand you're trying to find out about but old Harley. And I thought, is this a person that's gone senile? And he kept saying, you want to know about old Harley, do you? And I thought, that's interesting. So eventually I went to his house, he invited me, and he said, I may have a few bits and pieces. It turned out he had the man's private archive in the suitcase, not categorized, not preserved, as he would say, oh, the mice have been at it again, just literally languishing. And it was like a treasure trove. But also I felt it very sad to see the material just being there and going through it. It was, oh my God, this is a certificate from Oxford. This is his diploma, the wealth of information. And it was too much of a pull. It was why did he do this? Why did he go here? What was this about? What is this bit of information? So previously, no knowledge, a throwaway, silly thing in New Zealand has led me on this 5-year quest, following in his footsteps, trying to piece together his life. Yeah,
Wow.
so that's how I've come to know about Mr. Harley.
Wow, that's brilliant. I mean, that's the dream of all researchers, though, isn't it? That you go to a house and you find, I mean, you went from literally no information to having the information you could literally write a book from.
But yeah, because it was piecing together the other information. So
Yeah.
from that was a catalyst.
And this is what you need. This is what you need
Yeah.
for people like Harley. You need this
Mm.
sort of stuff. Otherwise, you're sort of, this is what, because a lot of people, a lot of books who try to sort of piece together the lives of little known figures will have to do the classic, we know he was born here, he went here, he was educated here, etc., etc., etc. And this is what other people's experiences were at those places. And you try and do that. And you always dream that if you have it, that your sort of in your pocket figure will have a suitcase full of information, personal information, to help you along. So that's amazing.
Yeah, because there's a real insight from his writing. So you get a sense of the person, his thoughts, his feelings. And as you said, it's concrete information. It's not supposition of may have, could have, would have. It's, he definitely did this, and this is why. So yeah.
Now I've read your blog. I was telling you about this on the website, and it occurs to me, I always love hearing talking to people about the research and how they do it. I was talking with Helen Rappaport a few weeks back, and she had these amazing stories about I know all these sort of lucky coincidences and going through her contacts to find stories just the same. And I was wondering what challenges occurred in your research after this sort of miraculous after finding the subject. What happened? Whether it's travel, whether it's literally finding that particular piece of information.
Yeah. So what happened afterwards was with the suitcase and then trying to find out more information. And there were so many unanswered questions. So the first thing I did was Wookie Hole. And it was just to kind of go, I've never heard of Wookie Hole. I didn't know what Wookie Hole was. Wookie Hole, by the way, for those viewers who don't know, is caves in Somerset, which Harley researched and excavated flint scraps as part of his anthropology diploma. So the visit was down to Wookie Hole, and driving down, it was, that was a question. What is this black man in 1909 doing at these caves? And so it was to go and explore what Wookie Hole was and to see the caves. and an awe-inspiring sight. And then that really kind of got me going in terms of, before I knew the information, because it wasn't linear. Why was he here? Why was he doing this? And that sparked it off. I was fortunate. I received the K. Blundell Award from the Society of Authors to go to Antigua. And I was so excited to go to Antigua, as you would be, to kind of research, but also very frustrating, because I'm sure just like you're used to going to the National Archives, and we kind of sit there and take it for granted. We just ping, 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 and we type up, and the person brings up all the archival material from the basement or wherever, and it appears like magic. So I kept thinking, lower your expectations. It's not going to be like that. It was so frustrating in terms of the information wasn't digitized, the lack of staff. So trying to cross-reference and find his family, I couldn't do that. I couldn't type in, for example, I had his father's name and his mother's name. And I went originally to the church, the parish where he was born, and the church. And I met this wonderful, like an old steward. And he had the parish records, and he brought out these lovely ledgers with kind of wonderful pen script and all the dates. And as the date got closer to his birthday, his year of birth, 1873, he had 1870, 1871, 72. Where's 1873? That's the only one he didn't have. It might be the archives, the National Archives. Get to the archives. No, we had a fire. And we think that's the one that may have been lost. Like, no. So cross-referencing information, it was so frustrating. So that was one of the frustrating things that I found. And again, the school records, the school had a fire. So it's like, oh, this fires taking place in Antigua at that time. So archival records, it was frustrating to try and find that concrete evidence. But there was a lot of oral histories. So Harley's mother is Josephine Eleanor Lake. And trying to find her, everyone on Antigua said, oh, Lake, she's from Anguilla. All the lakes are from Anguilla. And it was like, okay, is that conclusive evidence there? So some really good oral histories as well. Yeah.
That's, yeah, I know the feeling of going down looking for a particular thing, and it's the list of usually lists of dates and things, and under the entries you have, it's like usually official records and things like that. And of course you get close to your thing, so you try and hedge and go, right, I'll start 5 years earlier, just in case. Go down. As you approach it, it's a mix of excitement and dread, because the date is coming.
Yes. Yeah.
And in this case, just such bad luck that apparently fate knew you were coming.
I know,
wanted to stop you. But yeah, I mean, do go to Pamela's blog and read about her travels in more detail, because there's a lot of fun stories there that will amuse you greatly about her adventures in caves and cabs across the world. So let's go back to Harley. Did he, obviously you were sort of learning about him as you went along. Was there anything that particularly surprised you about him?
What surprised me was, it's something I said to a friend. I said, I can't believe the intellect and the power of this man at that time, because it's a narrative that we don't hear. And again, his wife that he married came from what's called a Black Washington, not upper class, just kind of elite society. So that was of interest to me. But going back to Harley, it was his determination. And in some of the letters he wrote about jealousy, and people are jealous of me. And at first I thought, yeah, whatever, right. But once I started to get into the research and the letters, etc., I could see why and what he meant. So he wasn't boasting, but he was a character, a product of colonial West Indies. So he had an education in terms of a British education, because all the textbooks was kind of from England, where you learned about God and the Bible, etc. And as a colonial West Indian, it was this very much superior thought of, I could succeed or whatever I do. So when he arrived in America in 1899, it was 3 years after the Plessy versus Ferguson law, which implemented the Jim Crow law, so separate but equal. So here is this educated Black man who qualified as a headmaster. He's now coming to pursue his childhood ambition, and he has this very superior attitude, and he finds it difficult to react with African Americans who he views as, he can't understand the race problem with them and why they are taking this demeaning behavior. So there's this friction between him as a colonial West Indian, again with white racism. He's also met with racism from the African American. So I found that interesting in terms of this class and this layer of racism as well, but also his tenacity and his determination. In one letter he writes back to Antigua when he gets to America, he writes back to his fellow Antiguans, don't sit there bemoaning your melancholy fate. Try and do something. Come and get an education. And one of the sentences he says, never mind the lynching or the race prejudice or the menial work. Just come and do what you can. And it was just kind of, wow.
You should write the tourist brochure. Not mind the lynching.
Yeah, but it's just the kind of pragmatism of it.
Wow.
And you kind of been thinking, okay, that's interesting, but that was the person he was.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I mean, this is sort of the society we're talking about that his wife was a part of, this class, is fascinating. It's a fascinating subject in itself.
It totally is. It's so Josephine Lawson, which was his wife, he met because he took a job to become a Sunday school teacher when he was in Washington to make ends meet, the kind of majority of students still do today. So he meets the wife at St. Luke's Church, which is at the pinnacle church for the Washington Black elite. So this is a church where Blacks and whites sat together. So this is 1900 we're talking about. So very, very unusual. So the wife's family, they're on the outskirts of the Washington Black elite. So the Washington Black elite were made up of families with a lineage, with a pedigree, who kind of like what we would call now old money. So the Lawsons were seen more as educationally elite, but they didn't have that lineage to belong to the Washington Black elite. But these were families who made their money through banking because of segregation, their own banks, insurance, newspapers, restaurants, and made them very wealthy. So they occupied kind of upmarket districts in Washington, D.C., as opposed to the tenement alleys you associate African Americans with at that time.
Yeah, so, I mean, you don't hear anything about this. It's a completely new world. I mean, I'll admit it, concept even. I mean, I'm aware that Black people could get on in the world if they tried hard and things, but I didn't know that. It never occurred to me. Actually, it makes a lot of sense when you presented with it. But
yeah, because one of the things that drew me to it, I thought I'd just write a bit about his wife to give him some context.
Yeah.
And then it just went
yeah.
and this whole new world opened. And I was reading a clip from Josephine's mother, Rosetta Lawson, who in herself was a pioneer in terms of the women's colored movement. And the article was from her going to Scotland in 1900 to lecture as part of the women's temperance movement. And in the article, she wrote, Upon my return, I was stopped in Paris and London to buy some silk gowns. I thought, 1900, a black woman buying silk. Who is this? And that was kind of the impetus to find out more about this Washington black elite.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually going to ask you about the women in Harley's life and his family, so we've gone there organically. Is there anything else you want to add about these women?
So in doing the research about the wife, that led me to his mother, and the mother was part of a group of amazing women. So one woman I came across was Miss Mary Church Terrell, and she was a powerhouse in activism. So you may have heard of Rosa Parks, who refused to give up her seat in the 1950s. That led to the bus boycott and seen as a foundation of the civil rights. Okay, hold on to your hats. Let me take you back. We're going back to 1908, when Miss Lawson Miss Terrell did the very same thing. She refused to give up her seat on a trolley bus to a white passenger. Now, at the time, she was traveling with a very fancy umbrella and a tennis racket. So that tells you the status of this person.
That visual is wonderful.
Yeah. So in terms of her activism, so she again was very active in terms of the anti-lynching movement with Ida B. Wells. She founded a founder member of the NAACP, also a founder member of the National Color Women's Association. So here was these women that were meeting, were active and progressive. They were doing gospel meetings, they were doing outreach works, they were active in suffrage, universal voting, anti-lynching. But I had never heard of any of them. And they existed, as I said, in this kind of insular goldfish bowl, where they kind of navigated the kind of humiliations of Jim Crow, but they still kind of advocated and benefited that community. So I found that was really interesting. And from that, I ended up writing a play.
Oh, right. Excellent. Wow.
Yeah.
Renaissance women time. Excellent. You're doing everything, Pamela. This is amazing. I have to talk about that next time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's great. These are great topics and stories and things that just most people have never heard of. I mean, I was literally thinking, forget Julian Fellows writing about New York elite. Can I have a series about these people?
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
I can see, visually, I can see my background as a TV producer.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
visions of Antigua and the plantations of Codrington, very famous plantation of Betty Hope, with twin statuettes. And then when it comes to America, New York, and a hustle and bustle and trolley carts and a handsome cow that's been drawn by a horse.
Yes.
And him at Harvard and friendship with Locke.
And what you were saying before as well about him coming from Antigua and having this kind of bold outlook that, I can do whatever I want. I try hard enough, sort of thing. And also his own self sort of self-confidence, which appears to be extremely well developed. That he's saying, well, I can do it. I am capable of doing it, and I'll show you all. And he comes, and then he hits the United States at this very critical time, and that sort of juxtaposition must have been very jolting. So that's amazing. I'm very glad to be hearing about all of this stuff, and I really do hope some of it gets onto TV at some point, because there's great stories here. But moving on, back to Harley. I briefly sort of, I'm gabbing a little about how confident he is and how strong he is. What sort of a person is he? What's he like? What do people think of him?
Okay, many opinions, including myself. When I was writing him, at first I was enthralled by him and a cheerleader and an admirer. But as I started to write the book, one of the things I didn't want to do was provide like a pedagogy, so like a portrayal of a saint. So there would be times when new information came to light, it would frustrate me. And I remember I finished the first draft and I was chasing some information and I thought, yay, finished the first draft, wrote a book. And then this information came in, which totally cut the legs from under me. And it was literally like, you have a naughty child at school. And I just went, no, could you do this to me? So his character is one of determination, self-belief, tenacity, but at the same time, some may say abrasive. I would say uncompromising. And he has the ability to make you cheer from him, to make you angry, to make you go, oh my gosh, you didn't just do that. And his time at Harvard with his friendship with Alan Locke, the exchange of letters between them, that sheds another light and dimension upon his thought process and how he reacts. So that's interesting. So there's a myriad of layers. So it's not me just saying, hey, this is wonderful Black man and he went to Harvard and Oxford and he achieved this. No, it's much more complex and multi-layered than that. And once you read a book, you really would go, I like him here. Oh my gosh, he did this and I don't like him and I'm angered, and you're cheering from him and then you're kind of annoyed with him. So there's a range of emotions. Yeah.
He sounds like a very human, brilliant, there's very human brilliance at play here. And to be honest, no, this man should, if anybody is watching from TV land, do get in touch with Pamela, because this man is gold for the sort of troubled geniuses everybody loves on TV at the second. I could see this being a very good series or movie. Anyway, no, that's fascinating. He, from like at the very beginning when you were talking about him, I could sort of sense this sort of complicated personality, probably driven by his own. Would you say at its basis, would it be, you think, to do with his great powers, mental powers in sort of scholarly
I think
ability?
it's that, but also at the time, because what you have to remember at the time period in terms of the stifling racism, what you could do and how he's perceived as a Black man. And one of the themes that comes through from letters that are written from his tutors, from deans, from various priests, he ends up becoming a curate under, is this theme of his temper. Harley has a hot West Indian temper, and that's referred to several times, the hot West Indian temper. Now, for me, I saw that as frustration in terms of you have no power, you can't do anything. So here you are as this educated Black man. I am probably more qualified than you. I have degrees in law from Howard University. I've been to Yale. I have a degree in Semitic languages. I've won prizes for my oratory. In Japanese Shintoism, I've written essays. I know the classics. I got a degree from Oxford in theology. I'm the first Black man to achieve the diploma in anthropology. But yet, how am I perceived? I am perceived as a boy, which was a term used for Black men. I am perceived as less than. So the frustration in communicating and to say, this is what I've done. This is how you still see me and how you treat me. So I can see that boiling over and that being expressed as the hot West Indian temper. But as I said, I see that. I think from experiences with my family, with Black men in terms of not getting the opportunities, not afforded those rights, I can see how that easily is misunderstood.
Yeah, I can understand that, definitely. And honestly, I like him a lot from what you've told me about him. I can also see where I would also, I can understand the sort of character we're talking about vaguely. I'm getting a sense of the sort of person he is, that a very inspiring person, but at the same time, he has his flaws. I'm curious, what do you think? Because you talk about, you said his ambition was to be a priest from a young age, and he goes on to these amazing heights. I'm curious, what do you think it is that drives him?
I think it's a sense of social justice. I really do believe that, because in terms of, he achieved his ambition to become a priest. He's ordained in 1911 at Canterbury Cathedral. But previously, he served as a curate in Shepshed at St. Bothol's Church. And one of the things, I came across an article that was written, it said, when Harley preached, the vicar remarked, the church is full of the scum. And this is kind of interesting analogy of the incumbent vicar who was there for 30 years. And it's very much, you come to church every Sunday and you go home and that's it. And the church was that dominant force in people's lives. So the priest was what you looked up to, because he was a learned man who was educated, he was a communicator with God. So whatever he said more or less went. And you didn't interact with the community. There's that distinction between them and us. So, as I would like to say, enter stage right, Harley, black man from America, who might be seen as unorthodox. So the first couple of weeks may be this curiosity. Who's this black man? This is now 1909 in Shepshed. This black man as a curate. And who is this person? Let's go and see. But once that wears off and the people are still coming, the annoyance of this incumbent vicar is like, well, why are they still coming? And he sets up, now you talk about well-being. 1909, Harley sets up a men's Bible class, a men's reading class, a men's socials, a group to talk about Shakespeare. And his motto was to get the best out of life. So you take part in your community and you become active. And from what I see, he was like a one man, I would acquaint it to like a citizen advice bureau. People would come and ask him for help. So again, he's a learned man, he's a lawyer, he got letters after his name. So people warmed to him. And eventually he left. They had a dispute between him and Harley. And the parishioners petitioned him to stay, but he decided to resign. And the local newspaper wrote, he did so much good work and was held in high affection. So I really see him as this warmth for people and social justice. He wanted to make a difference.
That's lovely. Yeah, that's great. I'm very glad that he was able to do those things, got the opportunity to do those things. And it really adds another sort of layer to his character, that it's not just about achievement. I want to help people.
Absolutely, yes, because he went on to his second curacy in Marside and then Deal, but he returned to Shepshed with the war, and he trained as a munitions worker. So he came back to Shepshed, and the lace factory, which is a predominant factory in Shepshed, was reconditioned as a munitions factory. So he worked as a munitions worker, which was again another kind of quirky twist in his story. But he eventually became an independent councillor. And here you really see his passion and determination. And this is the only Black councillor. That was 1926. And he was very forthright in terms of advocating for the people of Shepshed. And what I loved, I spent time at the Leicester Records office going through all these minutes. Now, if you go to a council meeting, you get the minutes, it's like, oh gosh, it's so boring. But it was brought alive because you kind of started to know the characters of the people at the time and the different councillors. And one of Harley's first motion, it's so eloquent in his description, basically just said, well, everyone on this council is corrupt. So what I think you should do is resign. And I thought, wow, not being political, but some politicians may need to listen to that.
Yeah,
I just love this. It's like, oh my God, what did you say?
She's just throwing a brick through the window.
Yeah, but I mean, another example of his kind of social activism, he was the chair of the housing committee. And at the time, similar to now, you had so many issues with housing and housing conditions and damp, etc. And where the council was taking time to make repairs, Harley took the workmen and literally went round to different houses and say, what do you need doing? And they said, well, do it now. Here's a workman, do it now. And it's like, oh my. So when the council meeting, well, how dare you do that? You're not meant to do that. You have to go through the council. And when the councillor owned the building firm, so he was saying, why, do you want the contract? So all this kind of underhand dealing. And so he was very much, what do you want to do? Here's a workman, go and do it. And when they tried to, like, remonstrate with him, his answer was, I'm the chair of the council. Chair of this committee. What are you going to do? And he was like, I love that.
That's brilliant. It's also just sort of hilarious that they come at him with the basically, how dare you fix things?
Yes. But I also love the fact that, as a local council, so he literally had the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, up this council. And again, here's this gifted, articulated man, oratory, educated. And there's almost a sense of, what are you going to tell me?
Yeah. try. Yeah. I'm interested to see what you have.
Absolutely, yeah. So
excellent.
His mastery with oratory and words is just delightful. When you read some, it's like, oh wow, yeah.
So that's a great bit of his life there. And again, are you just writing a script? I mean, it is a play. It is.
I did actually write a play. Yes, I did a play. We did it back in
absolutely
2017.
fascinating.
Yeah, because it just that information. So that scene where we created in the council chambers, it was great.
Amazing. Yeah. So I think we've given people a taste of what they can expect in the book. We won't go into the end or what happens precisely. I think we've given enough. If you want to find out what happens to Harley, please buy the book, which I will put in the description box below. I don't know why we have to always say below, because you know exactly where it is. It's a YouTube thing. Final thing.
Let me just say as well.
Yeah, go.
To push it further. There is a twist which you would not see coming, and I didn't see it coming.
I didn't see any of this coming. So
I didn't see this coming, and it's part way through. And I guarantee you, please do drop me an email if you do buy the book. Or should I say, when you buy the book and you read it, please do drop me an email, because when you read this section, you will say, "Oh my gosh, I didn't see that coming." I guarantee you.
Well, I'm really looking forward to it. I really will. I'm going to make a note somewhere to buy the book, and definitely we're definitely. I'm going to keep in touch. You know, you will get emails when I read it, and I want to find out more about what you're doing and things. You do great stuff. I'm curious. The last question I have regarding Harley. So I like to think that history shows us what we can, what we were, but also what we can be. And so, do you think that Harley can be an inspirational figure for people today?
Absolutely. One of the things he taught me personally was the ability to live. So here we are with all these technologies and wonderful things at our disposal, and it's to live life. And what I mean by that is I see some of my friends and people I know sleepwalking through life. They're existing. It's just the mundane. They're not challenging themselves. They're not taking risks. They're not putting themselves outside the comfort zone. And one of the things I've learned with Harley was do it, push yourself, find a way around, and just following him. And I think at the time when he lived, to achieve what he achieved, and again, as I said, when he wrote to his fellow Antiguans, don't mind the lynching and the menial work. And as he says, do what you need to do. If you have to crawl to conquer, be a conqueror bold. So I've definitely learned to live, and to live your life and not live it in fear.
That's excellent. That's amazing. That is where we will end this video, ladies and gentlemen. And if someone doesn't make a t-shirt with "Don't mind the lynching," then they should. Pamela, it's been an absolute delight to talk to you about this extraordinary figure today. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity for sharing Harley's story.
No, my absolute pleasure. And so, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. Please buy the book. Once you've read the book, find a way to tell Pamela what you thought of it. If you liked the twist, did you see the twist coming? Leave a comment below. Do stuff. Live your life. Live like Harley, if you can. And we will see you for another adventure in Historyland the next time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.